Hi, I am Dr. Jacob Larson, and this is Read, Write, and Cite, the channel where I teach you how to read, write, and cite for your college classes. In this video, I'm going to walk you through a sort of activity I've created for my students to just kind of demonstrate a couple different ways to do an in-text citation. So if you're one of my students, this helps you to complete that activity. If you're not, I hope this is still helpful for you because we're going to talk about a couple different ways that in-text citations look within a text, and hopefully this kind of illustrates the point for you. So thanks for watching. Here we go. All right. So in this example, we're going to talk about how to quote from a book, how to use an electronic source from a website, and how to quote a poem, for example, because they're all going to show up just a little bit differently. A couple things we probably want to know right off the bat, and that you probably know ahead of time. Every time that you use a source, whether that is you're using a direct quote, their exact words, or you're paraphrasing or summarizing and putting their ideas into your words, you still need to include an in-text citation at the end of the sentence where it's at. This is really important because the way that we communicate with our readers where information comes from is by putting it in quotes and by citing information. Something that doesn't appear in a quote or isn't being cited, especially if you're presenting new information, it comes off as if that information comes from you. And if you're actually quoting a source or citing, or, you're getting it from somewhere, then that's it's not a clear message. At the very least, it can be confusing for the reader. At the very worst, it's technically plagiarism because you're using their information without giving them credit. We don't want to do either of those things. We want to be clear. We want to give credit where credit is due. And so it's important that we know how to do an in-text citation. Now, there's multiple parts to a citation. There's what you do inside the text. That's the in-text citation. And then there's what you do at the end. That's a works cited entry. We're not talking about works cited entries in this paper. We're just talking about in-text citations. Your teachers may also call these parenthetical citations because they show up in parentheses. All right, so here are the basics right here. You are going to have some sort of quote, paraphrase, or summary, and afterwards, you're going to have in parentheses the author's last name and the page number and a period that goes afterwards. This is really important. Students like to put the period over here. Don't put the period over here. Put it over here. If you put it earlier, you're telling the reader that the citation is part of the next sentence, and we don't want to do that. Okay, because that'd be confusing. All right, and it would look like it belongs to the next sentence. Don't do that. So don't put a period here and here. You're only going to put something here if it's a quotation mark or a question mark. All right, so this is the basics right here. Now, sometimes you don't have an author's last name, and sometimes you don't have a page number. We'll talk about some of those exceptions. We're not going to cover all of them in this video, but there are some exceptions. Basically, use the best information that you have. So if you don't have an author's last name, you can use an abbreviated title from the text. And if you don't have a page number, use like a paragraph or a line or something like that, just so that it's clear when they look at the end of your document, which has the works cited source with all of the information, they can tell, okay, that's the source that they were citing from. They can go to the source and they can actually find the page, the paragraph, the line that the information came from. All right, that's the idea. So let's look at the most common example. Quoting from, say, I say most common. Let's look at a common example, and that's quoting from a book. So I took a quote from The Time Machine. This is from 1895, H.G. Wells. And so we got a paragraph here. It took 2 years to make, retorted the time traveler. Then, when we had all imitated the action of the medical man, he said, "Now, I want you to clearly understand that this lever being pressed over sends the machine gliding into the future, and this other reverses the motion. This saddle represents the seat of a time traveler. Presently, I am going to press the lever, and off the machine will go. It will vanish, pass into the future time, and disappear." Have a good look at the thing. Look at the table too, and satisfy yourselves there is no trickery. I don't want to waste this model and then be told I'm a quack. So this comes off of 10 page of my copy of the book. Or 10 page? Page 10. There we go. That sounds better. All right, so here's just a quick example. I took one of the quotes. How would you actually do this? Well, you look at your model here. You're in parentheses. Assuming that this quote's correct, we know that it comes from page 10. We would then type the author's last name and the page number in parentheses, and you just put it here. So it would look like this. What's the author's last name? It's Wells, and this is from page 10. Boom. Just like that. Let's look at the next example. Okay, let's say we're quoting an electronic source. This is incredibly common. This is like a news article. This is a specific page on a website. So I went and I found Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s I Have a Dream speech. It was on the NAAC website. NAACP. There we go. Said that right that time. It's on their website, and I just took an excerpt. An excerpt is just a part of the speech, right? Now, what I did is I counted the paragraphs, and I put it to the side here. If your source doesn't have page numbers, like an online source, it's really common to not have page numbers. You need to find some way to narrow it down to make it easier for people to find where the information comes from. So in this case, we can use a paragraph number. So let's say this is our sample quote. You put the author's last name, comma, PAR, period. That stands for paragraph. And then you put the paragraph number or numbers that it comes from. If it's more than one, then you could say like, boom. You just put like a dash like that. Okay? All right. So in this case, I numbered it for my students so that they know, all right, this is paragraph 25, which would mean this would be 24, 23, 22. This would be 26, 27, 28. All right? And then I put 2 examples here. So you could go find this, you look at which paragraph it is, and you type it in. What's the author's last name? Well, this is King Jr., and then you put PAR, and then whatever paragraph number that is. You just figure that out. Look just like that. Okay, and one last example. Let's say you're quoting a poem. Poems, we don't usually refer to them by their page number, though you could if it's in a printed book. And we don't usually refer to them by paragraph numbers. We use line numbers. So here's a poem, and it would look like this. So you have your sample quote, the author's last name, comma, you write line or lines if it's more than one, then you put the number in parentheses and period. So here's a one from Emily Dickinson. Fame is a fickle food. Fame is a fickle food upon a shifting plate, whose table once a guest, but not the second time is set, whose crumbs the crows inspect, and with ironic caw flap past it to the farmer's corn. Men eat of it and die. That's real uplifting, right? Okay, so if you wanted to quote this line right here, whose crumbs the crows inspect, you would go find it. Okay, which number is it? That's 5. So that would be 6. And you would do this. You would go, all right, so this is Dickinson, comma, line 6, boom, just like that. Okay, makes sense? I hope that is helpful for you. Again, if you're one of my students, I just did a couple of these for you. The idea is that you're just practicing and you're learning what this looks like. If you're not one of my students, I hope that this was helpful for you, just to kind of see what it looks like in a couple different ways. I hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Again, I'm Dr. Jacob Larson. This has been Read, Write, and Cite, and I'll see you in the next video.